Hello, and welcome back to the Box Office Poison podcast. My name is Moxie McMurder, and today I'm joined by Charlie Brigden.
Hello there.
You could say no. Everyone goes very quiet then, like, should I say
Yeah,
hello?
I don't know why. It's always, for some reason, as soon as it comes over, it's like, oh shit, I need to say something.
So, the reason that I wanted to bring you on today is because it was the Exorcist III anniversary just recently, the 30-year anniversary. Which is it's kind of weird because I don't know about you, but whenever I watch The Exorcist 3, I don't feel like it's a 30-year-old film, do you?
No, no. So how old is the original then?
Oh, that came out in 70
73.
oh 73. I was going to say 74. I don't do maths.
So I think we're probably talking about 47.
84, 94, 2004, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, 44. Hang on, 45?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
See, and that doesn't feel like a 45-year-old film either.
No,
So do you remember the first time that you saw The Exorcist 3?
no, not really. Um,
Did you come to it quite late?
yeah, I guess so because it's not so. I guess because the first film, because that took so long to be released in this country,
Mm,
because obviously it was banned up until what 1997.
yeah, that's right.
So it wasn't up until I'd seen, because I'd seen The Exorcist on pirate video while it was
Oh, we all
banned.
did.
Yeah, but not enough to appreciate it properly.
Mm.
So it wasn't until after I saw it properly at the cinema, and it suddenly became a massive thing in my life.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, because that was just that screening. I was like, it's probably the first and last time that I've actually been scared on the way home from the cinema. I was that affected by it, and
Yeah,
for me, it's the greatest horror film ever made.
yeah.
It's just there's a level of craft and depth to it
Oh,
that
absolutely.
just gives it, and it's just so good. Yeah, so I saw that in '97 when they re-released it.
Mm.
Calm down, will you?
It
Calm
wouldn't be one of
down.
my podcasts if dogs weren't involved.
Yeah, so after seeing it then, and then where after, I think probably a couple of years later, it came out on DVD, and then getting it on DVD and watching it again and again and again and again, and just getting a real appreciation for it.
Yeah.
Then I would have gone and watched the third one and the second one as well. I mean, it was
Yeah.
always one of those films that I always saw in the video shop,
Yes, me too. Yeah.
and I always like kind of vividly remember, like there was a shot on the back of Karras, Jason Miller's,
Mhm.
just where with his eyes, and that was
Oh,
always
yes,
really
I remember
creepy.
that.
And
Yeah.
the description where it kind of talked about him, Kinnaman being a detective, and thought that wasn't what The Exorcist was about. So it just kind of seemed weird anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of those that I finally caught up with later, as well many films that I used to see the well, just go and glance at the covers in the video shop.
Yeah. Yeah, I was the same. I kind of, well, to be honest, it was a bit like the Psycho sequels.
Mm,
Because nobody talked about them, I kind of assumed that they were crap,
yeah,
so didn't bother with them. And also with films like The Exorcist, and you can't do better than that. So, what's the point of a sequel?
well, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Right? So you kind of just assume they're rubbish. Otherwise, somebody would have said to you, "Have you seen it?" So I came to it quite late as well. And I was annoyed with myself for not watching it earlier.
Mm.
because it is, oh, it's just so interesting, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Um, oh no,
it's a,
go on, go on.
yeah, it's a fascinating film, and it's fascinating in just kind of the different ways that it takes away from the original film, and
Yes.
doesn't try to replay everything like your average sequel does.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit like I suppose they did with The Exorcist II.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, carrying on with Reagan. Whereas I think it's really cool that The Exorcist 3 has nothing to do with Reagan.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, focuses on Kidderman, played by the fantastic George C. Scott,
yeah,
who's just, oh my God, such a powerhouse on the screen.
it's amazing. There's something about just I think in horror films as well. It's getting those kind of actors like Gregory Peck in The Omen. So
Yeah.
getting someone of that stature to
Yeah,
be
someone
in
to
a film
lend
like
that
that.
gravitas.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the word. And just to kind of ground the film around it. And you look at George C. Scott, and you look at the kind of people he's played previously, and like
Mm,
he was in Pattern and stuff like that,
yeah.
and real kind of tough kind of character. And you think, well,
Hmm.
if something's going to shit him up, then what's it going to do to us?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Um, One of the things I really like you say, you know, he was in Pattern and all these films where he's your
Mm,
typical alpha male character, which to a degree he is in The Exorcist 3, but there's also this slight kind of vulnerability underneath it.
yeah, I mean, it reminds me of his role in The Changeling,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
which is another really, really good, and another one where I was, yeah, like I was annoyed for coming so late to it
Mm.
because I only saw it like last year sometime when they released it
Oh,
on Blu-ray.
oh,
And
that's right. I'd forgotten it was out on Blu-ray
yeah,
now.
I tried to watch it before, like years and years ago, and I
Mm.
couldn't get into it, so I kind of didn't follow up on the rest of it. And
Right.
I think maybe because of certainly because of the themes of the film and what it's all about, and also because I've got kids.
Yeah.
Then things change. You're a different person,
Mm.
whether you have kids or not. You grow, and there's all these films that react in different ways than they did when you were a kid or when you were kind of a teenager, which
Yeah.
is where most of us really start to eat up horror films as a genre, really.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine who she's got a kid and she used to be able to watch all the horror. Didn't matter what it was,
Hmm.
she loved it. And then she had a kid and she was like, yeah, there's just some stuff you can't go back to because you're a changed person and you just can't. And I was never happier to have not had kids at that moment.
I don't think there's anything that I've the only kind of films that I've kind of never wanted to go back to
Mm.
um, is stuff like Requiem for a Dream.
Oh God, yeah, that's the number. Like, great film,
Oh yeah, it's
great
amazing.
film,
It's so
but I
good,
never
but
want to watch it again.
yeah, it's horrific, and
It's
it's
so
just
depressing.
yeah, that's an experience I don't want again.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
I mean, even with like kind of the Devil Child stuff and things like The Boy and things like that with
Mm,
creepy kids and whatever doesn't bother me. Whereas like the Changeling, where it's his family get killed at the beginning.
mm,
It's that's something that really is kind of affecting
yeah.
and really gives stuff a kind of a different dimension emotionally, certainly.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think there's a touch of that in The Exorcist 3 as well. Like you said, it's similar kind of not similar in theme, but similar in the sense that it's somewhat of a slow burn.
Yes, absolutely.
And it kind of racks up the tension slowly.
Mm,
Um, which I think The Exorcist 3 does so perfectly,
yeah,
whether it's through, a scene that's been set up, whether it's the sound, that horrible kind of demon
yeah,
breathing roar sort of noise, um, there's so many different little touches that help build the tension and kind of that suspense.
Yeah, and it's yeah. I mean, the sound is always for me the most important part of a horror film.
Mm,
So it's
I think it's
especially sorry, go on.
no, go for it.
It's especially if you're hearing something you can't see,
Oh yeah,
because that
yeah.
is instantly makes your brain kind of start imagining and
I was just going to say that's something that the film does really well, actually, in terms of you don't see a hell of a lot. You
mm,
see the aftermath of it, and even then, it's still quite tame, the stuff that you
yeah,
see afterwards. Um, it's more, I don't know, that creeping unease that goes on throughout the film, the weird imagery,
mm,
like the Joker statue
yeah,
that just flashes up for a second. It's literally on the screen for like 3 seconds, but it's creepy as all hell.
absolutely. Yeah, I thought that's the Joker.
Yeah, I remember seeing it and going, that's the Joker. Like, what's happening? What happened? What that can't be the Joker, but that is the Joker.
Yeah,
And it wasn't until I watched the extras on the Blu-ray that the I guess it's the set designer maybe
yeah.
or props master was saying that William Blatty specifically said it has to be the Joker.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. I never would have
Yeah.
pegged him as a Batman fan. Have you read the book Legion?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
No, I haven't either. So that's the end of that.
I should do really, but I've always tried to read the original Exorcist novel and never got through it.
Oh, really?
Mm,
I did read it, God, 100 years ago, and thoroughly enjoyed it, but I don't remember any sort of specific differences. And I was just interested if you had read Legion, what sort of differences you would have picked
yeah.
up on. But none of us have read it, so.
I haven't seen the Legion cut either.
Now I have, but it was a while ago now. And aside from things like, I know that I remember Brad Dourif is, how do I put this? He's constantly patient X.
Mm,
There
yeah,
is no Father Karras. I've forgotten his real name.
Jason Miller.
Thank you, Jason Miller. He wasn't in the original cut. I believe there were some problems with his health. He had been an alcoholic
Yeah, yeah,
and couldn't quite retain the lines. So they went with Brad Dourif, and then for whatever reason, I've never been entirely sure quite what happened. They brought him on, and they decided to do the old switcheroo with Patient X
yeah. I think that was possibly that they wanted more of a connection to
to
the
the original.
original film, which is why they kind of
Yeah,
have. Because I think that yeah, the Exorcist, the exorcism at the end
yeah,
with the father mourning is kind of I think that's the kind of thing as well that they kind of put in
yes.
to make it more like an Exorcist film.
Yeah, apparently there had been a criticism, I think, from the suits, basically
Mm,
saying, yeah, there's no exorcism in this, and it's called The Exorcist, and we kind of need one.
yeah,
Uh, so that's why Father Morning pops up. But I actually don't mind Father Morning.
yeah,
I know a lot of fans really dislike that whole ending and how it's all special effects, bonanza and all that sort of stuff. But I don't
quite,
mind it. I think he's quite a striking figure.
yeah. And the actor Nicole Williamson is
Mm.
always even when he's in shit, he's really good because he was in
Yeah.
Spawn,
Oh,
um,
yes, of
which
course.
is diabolically shit, and yes,
Ripe
yeah,
for a reboot.
absolutely.
Of all the stuff that they keep rebooting, why not give Spawn another go?
Yeah, I think they always seem to talk about it. But and he was in Excalibur as well.
Oh, was he?
Yeah,
I don't
he was.
remember that.
Is he Merlin in that?
Oh, that sounds about right. I can imagine that.
And yes, and he's got his eyes certainly. Um,
Mm.
so he always he's kind of got a real kind of almost like iconic look.
Yeah, he does.
So yeah, no, he was good, and also the bit where he gets his face kind of stripped off is quite cool as well.
It is, isn't it? I mean, I know people complain about those special effects, but some of them are really bloody good.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Um,
yeah, because it was in a really good time as well. It's kind of before CGI kind of really kind of started to come in.
yeah,
Um, I think, yeah, well, I mean, at least in kind of like mainstream films, because it was what 1990
yeah,
when it came out. So the Abyss had just come out the previous year in '89, and that had the whole water tentacle thing
yeah,
in that, which was like the big CGI breakthrough
yeah,
before Terminator. So, but it was only in massive blockbusters and not in your average film like it is now. So you
yeah,
still had all these films that were around this time that were still doing traditional physical makeup effects.
yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, the 80s were like the big sort of golden period, I believe, for
Yeah,
practical
absolutely.
special effects.
Well, yeah, I mean, starting with American Wealth in London
Oh,
and
yeah,
going from there. I mean, that's yeah. So,
right.
and
Uh,
obviously the original Exorcist as well, the effect that had with
mhm,
Dick Smith's work,
yeah,
which was incredible. And then he was a massive. I think he was a mentor to Rick Baker, who went on and did his stuff. And then you had kind of Rob Bottin with the
yeah,
Thing and
the
things like that,
thing.
and the Howling. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that's kind of why we used to watch them because at this time, while I didn't see Exorcist III, we'd still. I mean, my parents were pretty lax when it came to as long as it didn't have nudity or sex, they weren't really bothered.
Mine were
Um,
exactly the same.
yeah,
I
so
could watch whatever horror I wanted, just so long as they didn't know
mm,
about any nudity or sex.
yeah, but the effects and the gore in that film were amazing, and they
Yeah.
still are great. And so seeing that as a youngster, um, is I think I was probably what about 13 when I saw that 12, 13.
Yeah.
So that was a real revelation.
Right? I mean, I think we're roughly around the same age. Um, but I can't imagine what people must have thought when the original Exorcist was released and saw some of these practical effects.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know we all hear stories of, someone fainted, someone threw up, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I would just love to see or hear somebody's reaction to seeing some of those things the first time. Like the writing that comes up on her stomach,
Oh yeah.
things like that. It must have blown people's minds.
Always for me the worst, the bit that gets me the most in that whole film is
Mm.
when they do the spinal tap
Oh yeah, I hate
and
that.
the blood is just spurting out and it's just like
Yeah, it's so eerily like realistic.
yeah. I mean, I know sometimes kind of you get people that do that recorded in the cinema back in the day, and it's
Yeah,
usually stuff like you see people with recorded kind of like Star Wars or something like that, so you can hear the reaction of the crowds back then. But I don't
yeah.
know if there's people that recorded like The Exorcist or Alien with the chest burster.
Oh, that would have been great.
The
Yeah.
idea of the idea of seeing that kind of thing at that time for the
Mm,
just oh my god, that's amazing.
right. We missed out.
Yeah,
We're a bit too young. When I rewatched The Exorcist just recently, I actually thought to myself that if this film was released today, no doubt it would be considered elevated horror,
yes. Ugh.
a term that is not particularly loved by film fans.
No.
More intelligent sort of horror, if you will. That sounds a bit pretentious, but when there's been
Oh,
a
no.
little bit more thought put into things,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is fine, but this whole elevated horror, meh.
Yeah, well, it's always been the case that kind of, especially kind of critically,
Mm,
that when a horror film is a success,
It's no longer horror.
It's suddenly a thriller.
Yeah, psychological thriller.
Exactly, yeah. And they try and kind of take that away. I mean, yeah, the elevated horror thing is annoying, but I do find that some horror fans as well are a bit kind of too precious about the whole thing.
Oh, that's
Um,
totally true. Yeah.
especially when it's kind of like they're very territorial. And it kind of that it makes me surprised sometimes that that horror gets so many new fans, because they're kind of, especially when someone who isn't kind of like a card carrying horror fan on the internet dares to write something about horror,
Yeah.
and it you usually kind of get the mob kind of
Yes.
closing ranks,
Yes.
and it's like, yeah, I don't need gatekeepers.
Yeah, there
So
is a lot of gatekeeping in horror. And like you say, I don't even think it would be considered horror now. I don't even know actually if people considered it a full horror film at the time, come to think of it.
yeah,
Even though
because
it seems obvious to me that it is, but
again, people put like the term supernatural thriller,
oh, there you go. Yeah, that's what
and
they'd call
because The
it.
Sixth Sense, that was a big one that
Mm,
is a horror film and
yeah.
kind of was always a supernatural thriller. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. Just people just kind of they like to just kind of generalize things, and they they want to attract the widest audience possible.
Mm,
So and some people think that horror is still um, a kind of, it's like a dirty magazine.
yeah.
It's like something to be on the top shelf, away from the kids. And
Not to be discussed in polite company.
yeah, and I guess some of that maybe is probably coming down from the whole video nasties thing and how that went on for so long.
Yeah.
But also because of how wide in terms of genre horror is.
Mm,
Um, it's just kind of infinite, really. So you get all these different films that are in different genres that that you could call like supernatural horrors, or supernatural thrillers, or occult thrillers, or
hmm
kind of monster movies and stuff like that. And they kind of tend to shy away from the actual horror label. Um,
Yeah.
and also because our brilliant media, as he said that incredibly sarcastically, um, love to pull up horror films as reasons for real life
Oh, yeah.
tragedies.
Yeah. Which is nonsense,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
and yeah, 99% of the time, it's they've never even watched the film, or it's got some kind of
Right?
tangential kind of connection.
Um, One of the things that I really like in The Exorcist III is when the priest meets the demon old lady
Mm,
and ends up having his head chopped off. I really like that that happens in the church.
yeah,
That idea of even a church isn't a safe place for you,
yeah,
regardless of whether you believe or don't believe, it's not a safe space. And I think that's really interesting because normally it's the sanctuary, it's where
mm,
people feel yeah, safe and looked after and whatever, but not in this case.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what we were saying before about the kind of the way they pushed it in to be more connected to the original Exorcist.
Mm,
I really kind of like the idea of it kind of being more of an anthology series on kind of horror and faith and
yeah.
more kind of occult stuff. It's like when
Mm,
they tried Halloween 3,
yeah.
they wanted to make it into something much more than just the slasher series.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff really interests me.
Mm,
Um, and it's certainly such a strong thing about both films, certainly the original Exorcist as well, um, which then comes back to, I guess, to Father Karras and the whole crisis of faith, because that's another reason why I think The Exorcist is the greatest horror film ever made. and just one of the greatest films ever made, period,
Yeah.
because it's not Reagan's story. It's the story of Father Karras, and all
Yeah.
about his faith and
Mm.
how his relationship to the church and to his faith um, evolves in the shadow of what happens with Reagan. And I just think
Yes.
it's just, I mean, he's such a marvelous actor as well. Um,
Yes, he is. He is.
so and it just gives such a level of depth to it, and which I just think is amazing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when he's in the cell being the Gemini killer,
Mm.
his delivery is so chilling and so deliberate when he's talking about the little girl that he murdered and how he
Yeah.
left parts of her by the river or whatever. It's got a bit of a Hannibal Lecter quality to it,
Mm.
which I know came later, but it's that quiet, deliberate delivery of the dialogue that just draws you in.
Yeah.
He's marvelous.
And he doesn't ham it up either,
No,
as
he
these
doesn't.
kind of lesser actors might have done.
Mm, yeah. And sort of on that same sort of theme, I think Brad Dourif does an incredible job.
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
dedicates himself 100, he commits to that role so much that you just can't help but be swept along with it all.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think he might be the most reliable actor ever.
Yeah, he's
Um,
always fantastic,
apart
regardless
from
of what the
maybe
film is.
him and Christopher Lee. Um,
Yes.
they're just he's so good in that role, and just the ranting he does,
Yeah.
and it's just it's like horrifying.
Mm. But it's like you say, he's not hamming it up either, but it's so intense. It's
Yeah.
so like you can see tears in his eyes when he's
Mm.
just screaming and ranting and raving. It's so effective. Um, oh, and of course we can't ignore one of the greatest, don't really want to call it a jump scare, but it is technically, but one of the best scares in horror ever, period. End of.
I'm in
Uh,
two minds
oh,
over this.
really?
Yeah, I think the first one is amazing,
Hmm.
but the second one doesn't work for me.
The one
Um,
with him coming out after the nurse with
yeah,
the
yeah,
what do you call them? Head snippers.
the massive kind of
Um,
secateurs,
yeah, that's
medical secateurs.
yes, medical secretary. That hey, that works.
I don't really know what they're used for in a medical kind of.
I think it was an invention. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I saw a thing with the prop master just going, yeah, there's like nothing like this. Oh, it might have been like based on what are they called? The jaws of death that they
Oh
used
God,
to open
yeah,
up cars.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it has something to do with that. Um, don't quote me on it, but I think there might be a link there. But no, go on. You're in two minds about it.
yeah. It's just, I mean, the guy pops up from his bed,
Hmm.
that always makes me jump a mile.
Yes, me too.
But I think maybe because of the reaction, or at least the reaction I have after scares, where it's kind of a mixture of kind of anxiety and exhilaration.
Yeah.
It's like the kind of the general feel where when you're on a roller coaster and you go down, you go around the massive loop, um,
Hmm.
and you're terrified. But then once you come out of the loop, there's that kind of the feeling of being alive,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I guess endorphins or whatever. Um, and so kind of so I'm still in that mind when that happens. So
Yeah.
I think for me maybe it's just there's not
It's like
enough time.
anticlimactic.
Yeah,
Oh, I
exactly.
see. I see.
Yeah.
Because I always think it works that way. Excuse me, I've got such a frog in my throat. No pun intended. For anyone listening, I have frogs. Otherwise, that's going to make no sense to anyone. I'm not swallowing frogs, I promise. I think part of the reason that it does work for me anyway is that you get that first jump with the guy in the bed who sits up, and you're like, oh, Jesus, makes me jump every time as well. And then you think that's the big scare, or at least I used to think that was the big scare. And then not long after, you get this much more, and with the music and
Mm.
everything, it just, I don't know, it chills me. It
Maybe,
really does.
maybe that's why I didn't have the reaction, because certainly watching it today,
Yeah.
because I haven't seen it for years previously,
Mm.
um, and my DVD went missing. Um, and typically, as soon as you said come on my podcast and talk about Exorcist 3, I went to order the Arrow, and it was just out of stock everywhere.
Oh no.
Yeah. So and it wasn't on Prime Video or anything, so I managed to find a copy. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's I guess because it's been heralded as the greatest jump scare or what have you.
Yeah,
So it has been talked about a lot.
it
So
has.
maybe I was waiting for it until aware of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes, particularly around Halloween, you can't miss the gif of that particular scare,
Yeah.
which does lessen it a bit, particularly if you haven't seen it before, and you know that moment's coming, it does ruin it a bit.
Yeah.
So you haven't seen it for a few years, however
Yeah.
long. Has your opinion of it changed in any way?
Yeah, it has actually, because I used to not rate it as much. I
Hmm.
mean, I still think it's kind of got a few kind of tonal issues maybe, because kind of like the first act of the film is like a buddy comedy.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really fun. And the guy playing Father Dyer,
Mm,
I'm kind of half of me's kind of disappointed they didn't get the original dude,
yeah.
but he was an actual priest, so I don't
Yeah,
think he
that's
didn't
fair enough.
follow. Yeah, so if you want to have a role like that,
Yeah.
so it's kind of, and it's certainly something you don't expect from a film called The Exorcist III.
Mm,
So it goes through that, and then after he dies, it then goes really, really bleak.
it does.
So I think maybe they could have made a smoother transition tonally,
Mm,
but this time it was a lot smoother than when I saw it before.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before I just found it a lot more jarring than I did this time.
Yeah. It was a surprise to me actually when I had rewatched it. Oof, I don't know how long ago it was now. It was a few years ago now,
Mm,
but I had rewatched it and I was really taken with the humor in it.
yeah.
I'd forgotten that it made me laugh as much as it does. Um, that whole thing in the hospital room where he's like, "You're reading Woman's Weekly or whatever,"
Yeah.
and he's like, "What? I'm supposed to give advice in a vacuum?" It's so good. And the dialogue again, it's so well written.
Yeah.
It's witty, it's intelligent, it's at times, with the stuff that the Gemini killer is saying, it's so creepy and
Mm.
it's just spot on. Um, but I've interrupted you there. Was there anything else that you sort of changed your mind on or reflected differently on?
No, not that I can think of.
I totally forgot to mention actually earlier on when we talked about the confessional murder,
Mm.
um, that the voice of the demon is George C. Scott's ex-wife.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Colleen Dewhurst. I think, I could be wrong, but I think it was the last thing she did before she died.
Oh, that's sad.
Um, yeah, it is. Because she was a great actress, such a striking face.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's just a bit of trivia to throw out there.
Well, did you know Jason Miller's Jason Patrick's dad?
I only found that out literally like 3 months ago, and it blew my mind. How could I have reached the age of 39 without knowing that? That's like the best kept secret in Hollywood. I had no idea. Um, Also, speaking of people that pop up in this film, it tickles me that there's a kid, a little redhead kid, in the hospital scene.
Mm.
Where the nurse goes in and you think it's the Gemini killer possessing a nurse, but it isn't. I think it's that kid. I swear he's the kid from Malcolm in the Middle or something like that.
Probably.
I'm now questioning myself. As now that I've said it out loud, I'm going, I bet it's not Malcolm in the Middle. It's something else that I used to watch. But it tickles me every time because I'm like, huh, it's that kid. Um, oh, yes, now the dream sequence.
Mm.
I love it. It's
Fabio.
so weird. Fabio. Like, what? And that's only going to be relevant to people of a certain age.
Yeah, yeah.
The kids today, they don't know about Fabio. Um, who else is in the dream sequence? I think Samuel L. Jackson pops
Yeah,
up
yeah.
so briefly. And I don't even know that I recognized it was him until I watched the extras and it was pointed out. Um, and there's somebody else, I swear, but it escapes me.
Mm.
Um, but I love that whole sequence. It's strange and unusual in the best way.
Yeah. It can, and it really works well as a kind of as a precursor to Father Dyer's death,
Yes.
because you have the whole thing, and then you can thinking, oh, it's a dream about him dying, and then that
Mm,
kind of leads into him actually being dead.
yeah. Um, I also quite like that the little boy who gets murdered at the beginning pops up in the dream sequence.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe in the director's cut, there's a little bit more information as to how they know each other.
Okay.
And there's a little bit more to their sort of backstory to flesh out why he was so, you know, upset at the fact that this kid that he knew was murdered.
Yeah.
Um, which I think is cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I love the fact that everyone who works at the hospital is sinister AF. Like you can't trust anyone at that hospital. Wouldn't you hate to be in that hospital?
Yeah, that nurse especially.
Yeah, she's so severe. And the creepy doctor who's always smoking and who gives his little monologue to himself
Yeah,
before he
yeah.
meets the detective. He's
Yeah, I
such an
noticed that
arsehole.
again. Yeah, noticing all the smoking.
Yes.
So recently I watched In the Mouth of Madness, which I think was
Oh
around the
yeah.
same time, and everyone in that film was smoking all the time.
Yeah. You don't see that anymore.
No, exactly.
In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah.
Um, See, that's another great 90s
Mm,
horror that again has great practical effects,
absolutely. Yeah.
apropos of nothing. Um, oh, Larry King. That's who I was thinking of. He doesn't
That's
pop
it.
up in the
Yeah.
dream sequence, but he is in the film very, very briefly. But Larry King, every time I'm like, that's Larry King. What's that about? Literally, what is that about? Why is Larry King in this? Very strange. Um, so I was going to try and get into the whole what questions does the film ask of the audience? Because in the first Exorcist, there's very much a sort of do you believe, do you not
Yeah.
believe? Which I think is sort of less so in the Exorcist 3, but
Yeah.
I can't quite articulate why.
His big speech with the where he says that he believes, and that
Yeah,
end. I guess that's something that, in terms of him killing him
yeah.
as the ending of the film, and kind of death being his release,
Mm.
and
Yeah, that ties in with the death be not proud
yeah,
uh, that he gives, which I always interpret as that's him as Father Karras at that moment.
yeah,
He's not the Gemini killer, just quoting scripture for shits and giggles.
Well, yeah.
Um, yeah, poor Father Karras. Like he just keeps saying, "Okay, kill me now."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's just murdered over and over again. Um, I really like that they did multiple possession rather than it just focusing on
Yeah.
um, patient X and all that jazz.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah, he can go into different people. The one who moves, all of that. That's very
Yeah.
cool. Particularly the creepy lady. Oh, actually, there's two creepy ladies. There's the creepy lady who pretends to be a nurse who turns up at Kidderman's house.
Yeah.
She's creepy. Again, another severe face. Um, Something of the terror hawk about her face, but
Mm.
again, a reference that kids today
Gosh.
they won't get. Um, and the old lady on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I've watched the video where they tell me how they did that effect, and I still don't know how they did that effect.
No.
It's like you expect to see the join because you imagine that they've shot it where she's scuttling along on the floor and that
Mm.
they've flipped it
Yeah.
and then put it above him, but you can't see the join, so I don't know if that is how they did it or not. And
Yeah.
every time I think that's so effective. Not even just her crawling on the ceiling, but that moment where she's turning to look at Kidderman and just the way her head is twisted, it's just, oh,
Yeah.
it's all kinds of creepy. Um, what else? What else? I did try to, I didn't spend too much time on it to be fair, but I did try and see if there was a link between It's a Wonderful Life and the themes of The Exorcist III. Um, and aside from maybe, and it's a bit of a reach, but aside from things like, there's an angel and he's thinking
Yeah.
of taking his own life. And so there's this sort of not quite ethereal, not quite religious, but totally religious undertones to that. Um, but I just wondered if there was any kind of link. I don't know if you're a fan of It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah. It's a good film. I haven't seen it years,
Mm,
years and years and years.
yeah.
Um, I can't think of any link really.
No, I couldn't either. I just wondered if there was something that I was missing. I thought, oh, I wonder if there's a link. I wonder if there's something that I've forgotten about because it's been yonks since I watched it.
Well, because they watch it, they go and see it, don't they? At the
Yeah,
cinema.
they go see it at the cinema. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if it was just a way of saying, look, this demon knows more than he should,
Yeah.
or rather, patient X knows more about Kidderman's life than he should.
Yeah.
But I did wonder if perhaps there was some sort of subtextual, you know, nonsense going on that I wasn't aware of.
There may be, and I've just completely missed it.
Yeah, we just can't think of it.
Yeah.
So it's the 30-year anniversary. We talked about how it doesn't feel 30 years old.
Yeah.
It still kind of comes across as quite a modern. I mean, I know it comes up at the beginning, Georgetown 1990, but if you
Yeah.
took that 1990 out of it, it could really have taken place at any time.
Yeah. Probably the smoking is the one thing that gives it away.
Yeah, yeah. It just still feels very fresh and I guess, yeah, modern and relevant, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it really doesn't feel like a 30-year-old film.
No. I guess that's the thing. I mean, with the Exorcist as well, is both these stories kind of will probably always feel relevant in some parts, um,
Mm.
just because of the nature of faith.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose it does. It does sort of, even if it's a subconscious thing at the back of your mind, you're thinking, do I believe? Do I not believe?
Yeah.
What would I do in that situation? Would I believe that this patient who looks spookily like someone I know who is dead is actually another person who I think is dead? Um, yeah, yeah. It's just such a fascinating film.
Yeah.
I feel like whenever I watch it, there's something new that I pick up on that I maybe hadn't noticed before or hadn't really appreciated before.
Mm.
Um, and of course, there's some classic lines in there, like when he slams his hand on the desk and he's all, "It's not in the file, it's not," and
Yeah,
you just get
random.
some, yeah, pure George C. Scott
um,
anger and
the carp.
rage. Yes, the carp. He says that line so like it's all fun and games about this carp that's
Yeah.
in the bathtub until he says, "If I go home and it's still alive, I'll kill it." But he says it in such a stone-faced, like you really would, wouldn't you? You're at the end of your rope, man. Um, but again, that's just one of those things about the film. There's so many little touches and little quotes and moments.
Yeah.
Um, Even little moments that take you back to the original, like the clock that stops.
Mm.
I had totally forgotten about that and didn't connect it until I was looking through some other stuff to do with The Exorcist, and it mentioned oh, I've forgotten his name, the old priest, Max von Sydow's character.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He's
Um,
uh, before he comes to Georgetown and meets Reagan and everything. He's oh, what the hell happens? Something happens,
yeah, he
and
goes to Iraq and he went
that's
to
it.
Africa as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And he's there, and the beast, whatever, the demon, somehow
yeah,
makes itself known, and the clock in the room stops, and it's one of those pendulum clocks.
yeah.
So it's really noticeable. And they did that again in The Exorcist III, which I thought was pretty
Mm.
cool. Just a small little touch that, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I always appreciate those little sort of Easter eggs or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, what about the score? I'm not sure who did the score for the film. I
Oh,
did know.
it's a guy called Barry DeVorzen.
Oh, maybe I
He's
didn't know
yeah, he did like Night of the Creeps and he did The Warriors, the score
that.
for that.
Okay.
So he's been around. But I didn't really pay much attention to the score this time. Um,
Mm.
it didn't seem to be particularly kind of, I don't
It's
know.
not at the forefront of the film, is it?
No,
Normally
no.
there's a theme that's sort of recurring or, just general score. But for me, the sound is more the roaring, the wind, the
Yeah, absolutely.
whispers,
Yeah,
the giggling, the strange little noises that just help set the scene and keep you on edge a little bit.
yeah.
I wonder if that was intentional, sort of keeping the score very minimal
Very
and
possibly. Yeah.
relying. Yeah, yeah. Um, is there anything that I haven't brought up that you wanted to talk about with the film?
Not that I can think of, to be honest with you. I think it's kind of been pretty comprehensive.
Well, that's good. Um, so other than telling people out there, anyone who may or may not be listening, um, to go and check it out if they haven't, or to revisit it if it's been a while, um, because I'm sure there are people out there who watched it, a few years ago or whatever, and probably dismissed it
Yeah.
due to that slow pace and perhaps even the fact that Reagan's not involved.
But yeah.
Also, you've got it coming on the back of Exorcist II Heretic, which
Yeah.
nobody likes.
I like it.
Do you?
Well,
It's
yeah, it's not. I don't necessarily think it's a good film because
mm,
it's not, but I
yeah,
still find it an interesting film.
yeah. I haven't seen it in so long.
It's mental. I think
I
that's why I
re
like it because it is just insane.
yeah, I remember being very yeah. I wasn't sure when I watched it. I was like, "What is this? But this is okay. It's different." I'll give it that. But I should really go back and rewatch it. But for whatever reason, I just go,
Yeah, no, I think most sane people do that.
Well, I've never been called sane before, but I'll take it. I'll take it. This feels like a really short podcast episode, but I do feel like we've covered a
I think
lot,
so, yeah.
um, which is fine because I'm hoping you're going to come back on the
Oh,
podcast.
absolutely, yeah.
Oh, good. Because there are lots of things we need to discuss.
Mm,
For example, Phantom of the Paradise,
yes.
because like no one else I know knows that film, likes that film,
And it's
could
amazing.
care less about that film, and I think it's incredible. And I
Absolutely, yeah.
need people.
It's so
Yeah,
good.
it really is, and I need more people to know about it and to talk to about it because my husband can only hear so much.
Oh, does he like it?
He does, thankfully.
Good.
But yes, thank you so much for doing this tonight. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really
You're
fun.
very welcome. Good. And like I say, I hope you'll come on again and talk about some other movies.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Fantastic. Oh, good, good. Um, well, I'll end it there and say thank you to anybody who's listening. I really appreciate it. If you like this episode, don't forget to go and check out the others. And don't forget to subscribe because I'd really appreciate it. Um, and that's all for this episode. I'll catch you all next time. Sweet screams.